Kenyans are now calling for the immediate recall and resignation and return to the divided states of Meg Whitman. Fingers are being pointed at her as the reason why Kenya is in this financial mess to begin with. Because she's even the one who actually made Biden take such a risky risk, that doesn't even make sense, on Nabi family. She's the reason that the IMF and the World Bank even came back to Kenya. And there's a show that I released, Jana, from this guy, this analyst, who was saying that whenever the IMF comes into a country, they're not giving you a loan so you can pay back with a clean heart. They're giving you a loan. They never want that money back because they're the front for these multinational corporations. And we already know the world is being run by a multinational corporation. So he was saying we should check the Coca-Colas and the HPs of this world. Well, guess what? Maggie Dearest used to actually be like, I think the head of Hewlett Packard, and she's a dollar billionaire. So you think her being in Kenya was really about us? Or was it to further the agenda of the Mzungus in Kenya? So guys are just saying, without her, we'd not be in these problems. We'd not be in this crazy debt burden. And don't forget, last year, Mandamano, she was heavily interfering. And there's even a clip that I'll share at the end of this, where Baba, and I know he's not very popular right now, where Baba was saying, yo, stay out of Kenya. Kenya is not a U.S. colony. Kenya is not part of the United States. We're not a U.S. company. So keep your fingers, dirty hands off. And now Kenyans are like, yo, she needs to go. I think she was already airlifted out. I don't know if she ever came back. And the funny thing is, after all this, ever since the cabinet was fired, now all of a sudden, the divided states is issuing advisories to, I don't know if it was to their citizens or to the general or to the world or whatever, about Gen Z demonstrations in Kenya. Maggie's the problem. She needs to go. And you know what, family? I knew the rubber was hitting the road when she stood in the middle of the red carpet and Nabi held her umbrella. I'll add that to the end of this video as well. I think she got carried away, yo. I think she got carried away. She was like, oh my God, I think neo-colonialism just got to her head. But yo, it's time for her to get recalled.
So guys, you know, it's always very easy to blame someone for your mistakes, particularly when your mistakes go out of hand. That is what is happening in Kenya right now. The Kenyan government, including President Ruto, or rather President Ruto himself, is blaming the US government for sabotaging his government.
News just in, family. The United States government is considering recalling Maggie Dearest after not only has she been trending in Kenya and maybe even globally, because you know Kenya was trending #1 in the world for the last like 24 hours plus. Paka IMF even had to come and make a statement. But imagine the number of phone calls, because you know Kenyans, we got time, we got bundles, and we got brains. Imagine the number of phone calls and emails they've been getting. So this was being reported over there on Twitter by Gabriel Oguda, guys. You see? And who was saying that the online activism doesn't work? Because I'm telling you, the backlash from this thing. And then now, as the bodies continue to being found in Kware, like the whole situation is looking really dire. Even though now, maybe I'll do just a whole separate video on that, family. But the negative backlash on the divided states is so insane that they actually might recall her. So the pressure increases, Ama decreases.
Lead to a dialogue between Ichungwa and Kalonzo. Everything is good with Mandaman. Tell the rogue ambassador, Kenya is not United States. Kenya is not a colony of the United States. Keep your mouth shut when you hear. Otherwise, we will call for your recall back to your country. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
talking about why Kenya should be everyone's destination in Africa. Kenya is the most stable democracy in Africa. Kenya is the gateway to the East African market of almost 500 million consumers. Kenya is the regional logistics hub. Kenya is the leading regional financial hub. And Kenya, with its Silicon Savannah and super smart engineers, is the region's ICT hub. Kenya is a leading destination for foreign direct investment and venture capital.
Well, the situation in Kenya with the protests, well, first of all, we'll say that the president of Kenya has long been regarded as a Western client, if not a puppet. And that's not without reason. He has regularly ingratiated himself with the West. He has been pursuing neoliberal economic policies within Kenya that have made the lives of the people increasingly miserable. And so this has resulted, predictably, in protests that began peacefully and turned violent because of the police. The police shot at peaceful protesters. Now, they're calling for the removal of the president of Kenya, William Ruto. Now, what I would say about that situation is that it's similar to the situation before it in Sudan, and it's similar to the situation before Sudan in Egypt, where the people are protesting against the government for policies that the government is implementing, which the government is held hostage to implement in favor of multinational corporations and international lenders, chief among them the International Monetary Fund. In fact, the bill that stirred the protests in Kenya initially is basically an IMF bill, a structural adjustment reform, an austerity measure that is being demanded by the IMF of the Ruto government. So my opinion, as was my opinion with regards to Sudan, when Omar Bashir was being blamed for the economic policies that were the austerity measures, the austerity economic policies, the neoliberal policies that he was implementing under coercion in Sudan, and the protests against Sisi because of the neoliberal policies that he was implementing under coercion. My position has always been that these leaders, these politicians, exist to take the blame for the policies that they're implementing on behalf of private sector power. That's why they exist. That's why I call them effigies, because they exist to implement the policies that will make them unpopular, and then they'll take the brunt of the unpopularity. They'll take the brunt of public anger, and then they'll be removed, but the policies will remain, because the source of the policies is the private sector, is the international private sector. It's the OCGFC. It's the Western multinational corporations and lenders, financial institutions, and so forth. Again, specifically, the International Monetary Fund. This is your problem. And now, who is the International Monetary Fund doing what it's doing? Who is it doing it for? It's not doing it for Kenya. We all know that. And it wasn't doing it for Sudan, and it's not doing it for Egypt. So who are they doing it for? And when you identify who they're doing it for, then those are the private sector players, those are the power brokers that it makes more sense to me that the population should be protesting and should be directing their activism and their opposition towards those actors on the political and economic scene in Kenya, not the government. Now, I'm not speaking up in favor of William Ruto. There's a lot of problems with his government, certainly, without question, just as there were problems with the government of Omar Bashir, and there's certainly a multitude of problems with the government of Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. But when you're talking about specifically the way that they're managing the economy, you have to understand that they are not the managers of the economy. Their lenders are the managers of the economy, and the lenders are managing the economy in such a way as to benefit Western multinational corporations. So, for example, in Kenya, You should look at Coca-Cola. You should look at General Electric. You should look at Standard Chartered. You should look at Barclays Bank. Look at Safaricom, Nestle, IBM, and look at Toyota. These are the beneficiaries of the economic policies. These are the beneficiaries of neoliberalism. They're the ones who are holding the government hostage. And they're doing it by means of the IMF. So your president, and again, whether it's Kenya or whether it's Sudan or whether it's Egypt or whether it's Pakistan and many other places around the world, and increasingly you can say the same thing about countries in Europe, these governments, these politicians are hostages, and the policies that they're implementing are essentially like when you see a hostage being forced to read a list of demands. You don't get angry at the hostage for the demands that he's making on behalf of the hostage taker. And that's what the government does. That's what your president does. That's what your prime minister is doing. They're just reading the list of demands that they have been told that they must be met in order for them to not be eliminated. And the one that's going to be eliminated here isn't the president, it's your whole economy. Because the IMF has considerable power to sabotage and cripple your economy if you don't do what they say. That's why it's better for you if you never get involved with them in the first place. And this is why I've said time and time again that it's much better for Muslim countries, for countries in the global south, for countries in Africa, to do business with China, to do business with Russia, while they still can, while those countries are still interested in investing in Africa, in the global south, Latin America, and the Muslim world, and so on, while they still have the money to spend, you ought to take the money from them rather than taking the money from the IMF. Because the IMF and Western lenders generally are not actually interested in you paying them back. They don't want you to pay them back. Because when they loan you money, they're calling it a loan, and you think it's a loan, but what they're actually doing is buying you. So they don't want the money back. They want what they bought, which is your whole country.
We're obviously looking at what is going on in Nairobi and in Kenya, where Secretary General is obviously deeply concerned over the reported violence that we've seen connected with these protests and these street demonstrations. He's very much saddened by the reports of deaths and injuries, including journalists and medical personnel. We're also very concerned about reported cases of targeted arbitrary detentions. It is very important that the rights of people to demonstrate peacefully be upheld. As we say anywhere around the world, it is up also to authorities to ensure that those rights are respected, and that all incidents of deaths in the hands of security forces be fully investigated, that people be held to account. He urges the police and the authorities and security forces in Kenya to exercise restraint, and for the demonstrators.
Barely a few hours after President William Samoei Ruto accused America of trying to sabotage his government, the US Embassy has issued another travel advisory. And this is because the Gen Zs have said tomorrow they are back on the streets, and they are saying they want to force William Ruto to listen to them. William Ruto is in a corner, ladies and gentlemen. Now, William Ruto had earlier said that the USA, through the Ford Foundation, is sponsoring the Gen Zs to topple his government. And he said that there's a lot of money circulating. And he said that sooner than soonest, they will ask these NGOs to leave the country. But the embassy is issuing travel advisory. They're saying US Embassy issues another travel advisory ahead of planned protests. The United States Embassy on Monday issued a travel advisory and alert to its citizens in Kenya over planned demonstrations on Tuesday and Thursday. In the alert, the embassy warned of demonstrations in the Nairobi CBD and other major cities. And the US Embassy is telling its citizens that they need to be aware of police checkpoints. And they're saying that they need to close their doors and roll their windows basically close their vehicles so that they don't fall in any trap of getting accidents. They need to keep updating their families and friends of where they are, and they need to review their security measures. And if they have any problems, they should call the embassy through a number that was given there. You all know that William Ruto does not take this kindly, because what William Ruto has done is that he, according to him, he feels he has succumbed to almost everything that the Gen Z had demanded. You all know by now that Inspector General was forced to resign. You know that the cabinet was dissolved, and you know that the Finance Bill 2024 has been suspended. Someone was asking me, Parliament is back on session, but are they doing anything about the Finance Bill, or have they done anything? So according to William Ruto feels that everything is safe. And so by giving travel advisory, the US Embassy or the United States of America is trying to give this demonstration prominence. And this is something that William Ruto would not want. William Ruto had wanted to trivialize this thing as if everything is now okay, as if everything is back to normalcy, because I heard him saying that there are people who have been sponsoring these demonstrations and they will deal with them, including the deaths that occurred and the bodies that were in quarry. But then the Gen Zs have got a different thought. Gen Zs have been asking William Ruto to explain who killed most of them, including the Denzel, the JQuat student who occupied parliament. Someone followed him after the incident, and he was cast in some dam, a quarry that was full of water, and he died. The bodies that were being retrieved from that dump site are unaccounted for. And Gen Zs feel that most of their colleagues are the people who are lying there. Today, the entire place was burnt in what was felt that this was an attempt to conceal evidence. And the conditions that have been put forward, even though William Ruto feels that everything is okay, they are telling William Ruto, we are not just going to sit back and watch you telling us that the Inspector General is gone. He needs to be taken to jail. We need the killer cops who are still working at large. We need you to prosecute those members of the cabinet who are corrupt. And you see, they are also telling William Ruto that the PSS must go and Parliament must be dissolved, something that William Ruto is not going to accept. We've seen the US issuing those travel advisory, and whenever they do that, sometimes they know what is going to happen. I remember when in 2022, when IEBC was about to declare a presidential candidate, when they were about to declare Ruto, there was that travel advisory. And they even cautioned them not to go to Kisumu. And people were wondering, there was an air of peace. Why were they giving this travel advisory? They had known what was going to happen. And on the day of Supreme Court verdict, it was the same. So when you see them sometimes issuing those travel advisory, they help the country with some intelligence. So they may be on the know that maybe the government is planning mayhem, or they know that the magnitude of this demonstration is going to be huge, because if there is something that has really bothered William Ruto, are the numbers that the Gen Zs always attract. The peace with which they portray and manifest when they are on the streets, so much that even the policemen who are shooting them will always remain with some guilt. William Ruto and the US, I don't think they're reading from the same page, because I don't understand why the US must issue travel advisory at a time when their good friend is telling them that everything is okay. The Gen Z don't pose any threat, because William Ruto does not want to be seen as a coward. He does not want to be seen as someone who is being bothered, who is threatened by Gen Zs. But the reality is, he is bothered extremely about what is happening. Gen Zs have said, occupy CBD. And William Ruto is asking, What else do you want? I have tried my best. But they're telling William Ruto, we know you. You always speak, but you don't implement. What we are really waiting for, it is one thing to dissolve your cabinet. It is another to give us a credible cabinet. Because there are rumors that William Ruto wants to include some of the members of parliament who were serving in the previous parliament. Some of them who went to the ballot and people voted against them. Some governors and senators. He wants to recycle. And Gen Zs are asking, this idea of recycling, don't we have a place in your government? And they're telling him, before you include your government, you consult us. And I think this is the best thing that William Ruto should do. Because William Ruto would be adding petrol into fire if he decides to give us another cabinet that is even worse.
So from this enlightening video, we can clearly see that the President Ruto, the puppet president, is clearly afraid. He's trying to pretend that things are calm, but things are really not calm. Things are stirring up. As you heard, Kenya has been issued with a travel advisory by the United States of America. You know, Ruto is trying to make it seem like everything is cool, everything is just okay, you understand? But the USA has intelligence everywhere. The USA is like an octopus. Its tentacles are spread everywhere. Now, the USA is telling its citizens to be aware and to be cautious while in Kenya. And maybe those who have not traveled yet should not. But Ruto is saying everything is okay. Myself as a Kenyan, I'm not really certain. If I was a person who is of United States of America, I would take heed of what the ambassador is saying, because she knows something. The USA has always told prophecies. They have always said that don't go here, don't go there. To the common person, they would they would look and see that everything is calm. Like, say today, the USA would say tomorrow there will be demonstrations here. But if you go there today, you see everything is okay. You think like, why is the USA saying this? You understand? Now, Ruto is angry about this. He thinks that because the USA is giving travel advisory, the USA is giving power to the Gen Z. The USA is making more headlines that the Gen Z are taking over. The Gen Z are Ruto's greatest nemesis right now, if I can ask. And now Meg Whitman, who is the ambassador, saying such a thing makes the relationship with Ruto not really the best. You understand? It was just 2 months or a month ago, Ruto went to the USA, where he had a very interesting tour. He was even welcomed to the White House. Today, Ruto is saying that that government that welcomed him at the White House is the same government that wants to topple his government. Vanity, vanity, vanity. It's all just vanity. One time you're dining with somebody, you call them your friend. Another time, you accuse them of wanting to topple your government. I don't think the Gen Z are being sponsored. I'm not sure. I'm not certain. I don't know, and I don't think so. I have the right to my opinion. I went there, I saw everything, and I didn't see anybody who is a leader saying, hey, follow me, let's do this and that. No. People were gathered in groups, and we didn't have no leader. Groups in terms of area. You know, Nairobi is having different area. But I didn't see no group. Now, it is true, the things which are happening here are sad. Now Kenyans, the Kenyan government, not Kenyans, the Kenyan government want the USA to leave Kenya. The Kenyan government wants the US ambassador to leave Kenya and to stop meddling in the affairs of the country. What do you think? Is Meg Whitman doing the right thing by cautioning her people by issuing a travel advisory? Or is she doing the wrong thing? If you were in the position of Meg Whitman, what would you have done? That is a question I'm leaving you to answer. Share your thoughts in the comment section where we shall also extend this dialogue. See you in the next video.